I am Nogi. Today I am interviewing Solara, the world-famous 1111 visionary. I am a translator and I have translated 3 of her books. There are many fans of her work in Japan. I went to Peru at the end of the last year to participate in her Antawa ceremonies. So I could share my experiences there and what I learned from the ceremonies with the people in Japan. Solara is my teacher and I respect her very much. So then, I would like to start the interview. Thank you very much. You are well known around the world as an 1111 visionary. Would you tell us what is 1111?
You start out with a good question. 1111 is the doorway between duality and oneness. Those are 2 different reality systems. They're also, it's like a spiral of evolution, because evolution, it doesn't go, it's not a linear thing, it's a spiral in the formation of a spiral. And so ever since we first came to this planet, it was also known at the beginning of time, and also known as the descent into matter. And ever since then, we've been traveling upon what's known as the detour of duality. That means we were subject, everything was subject to oppositions, to polarities. We had night and day, we had man and woman, we had good and bad, black and white. We had all these oppositions, and that was kind of the backbone or the skeleton of the reality system that we were traveling through on the detour of duality. And it wasn't fun. And one of the precepts of the detour of duality when we first came to the planet was the erasing of our memories of who we really are. And since then, while we've been walking on the detour of duality, we've been picking up fragments of remembrance and trying to remember who we are and why we are here. And then we finally, so 1111, the first activation was in January 11th and 12th, 1992, and over 144,000 people participated all over the world. And this was in the days before internet, if you can imagine, trying to get the word out without internet. And we published these little booklets about what was 1111, and we sold them, we gave them away, people translated them into 25 languages, and it resonated with a lot of people. So that's how we got 144,000 people participate. But what the 1111 did, the activation of the 1111 back then, the initial original activation of the 1111, is it took one evolutionary spiral that we'd been traveling on that was based on the reality system of duality and all those oppositions, and it took a very different evolutionary spiral that was based on oneness, that we're all part of one true being. And it took these very different evolutionary spirals that would never normally meet or encounter each other or interact with each other, and it took them and interlocked them. It created a kind of a transfer zone, and you can see it by, if you take one circle as one evolutionary spiral, another circle below it, and the zone of overlap in between those 2 spirals. So it was very momentous, and that presented us with our pathway out of duality, our pathway out of the detour of duality, finally. After stumbling along and for lifetimes and lifetimes on Earth, we suddenly had a doorway through. And within the 1111 doorway, there are what's known as the 11 gates, and each one is like a lock in a canal. And when you travel through a canal, you go through a certain part, and then you enter the lock, and then the doors close behind you and in front of you. And then the lock fills up with water, and you actually shift a level, and then the doorway in front of you opens, and you travel on in a whole new level than you were before. And so that's what the gates of the 1111 did. And they've all been activated by now. The final one was in 2012. And originally I was told that the doorway of the 1111 was supposed to close around then. And when we got to 2012, it became obvious that humanity wasn't ready yet. We were still going through experiencing all these previous levels of the previous gates. And so it still hasn't closed. And my feeling is it's going to finally close next year. And that's a big point of division, where the ones who need more time in duality will continue on in another realm, in the duality realm, and other ones of us will merge into the new reality. So it's a very critical time for planet Earth. It's the most important time we've ever had. And it's a time to really shift our entire beings and to get off of the detour of duality and into a new reality. So it's very exciting. It's also right now, the time we're in is known as the final days of duality. And it's not the most fun time, as you might have noticed. All over the world, the old systems are breaking and falling. And that's very uncomfortable. We can understand that a lot of those old systems were very corrupt and that they have to go. And we can see that in many ways humanity has been enslaved during their passage through duality. And we know that it's time now the game is over. It's time to step free of all of that. But that doesn't make it an easy time. It's a very challenging time. There's waves of fear that come in. There's waves of feeling way beyond our comfort zones. And, but it's necessary. And we just have to go through the awkwardness of this transition zone between two very different reality systems and birth and create a true new world. And that's what we're doing. So that's very exciting. But it's, as I said, it's very challenging. It can be very hard at times. You can feel very insecure at times. But the more that the new reality comes in, the more we can feel it. And it's like a whole new world. We're no longer living on planet Earth in one reality like we were during our passage through the detour of duality. We thought that was the only reality there was. And we thought this isn't a very nice reality many times, but that's all we had. But now there's actually multiple realities going on at the same time, which makes it very confusing at times. It makes it chaotic at times. As the new reality gets stronger and stronger, and this happens because more of us become true ones. And it's all about the merging of our timeless true selves into our physical body, merging of the timeless true worlds into the physical world. And the more we do that, the more the new reality becomes visible. And so even though we're in this chaotic, sometimes very sad, sometimes heartbreaking, sometimes it looks like there's not enough progress. Sometimes it looks like the really corrupt, mean ones have taken over the planet. But at the same time, the new energies that are coming in are undeniable, and they're beautiful, and they're exquisite, and they're full of love, and they're full of creativity, and they're full of joy. And that's what we have to focus on, no matter what else is happening there. We can't get drawn into the little narrow dying world of duality. We have to focus on the new true world that's being born and base our actions and everything we do, everything we think and feel on that. Sorry, that was quite a long answer to your question.
No, it's not. It's very touching and wow, new true world.
And the time we're in takes a lot of courage of all of us. We see things we don't want to see. Every single day in the news, there's at least one disaster somewhere in the planet. Sometimes now there's getting to be 2 or 3 some days. And we just have to stay faster than, remember who we are, and just stay in our hearts and our love and our compassion, and know why we're here, and keep focusing on that. We are here to birth a new true world, and we're here to aid in that transition from the old corrupt world of duality into bringing and fully inhabiting the new reality.
Thank you very much. So it's about the next question is about the end of the duality. Is that true that the coming polar shift was triggered and is now inevitable by the opening of the 1111 doorways?
Well, I feel that the polar shift's in progress, and it's been happening for several years, and many scientists actually feel this too. There's physical signs like weakening of the magnetic field. Just recently, in the last week, the amazing auroras they've had in the southern and northern hemispheres of the planet, a lot of them have been magenta and red. And I've heard that the red is very, from a friend of mine in Iceland just told me that the red ones are very rare because they see auroras and northern lights all the time or frequently. So they grew up with them. But the red ones are very rare, and they usually only come after a really strong storm. But there haven't been strong storms. So she started doing research on it and found out that the red and magenta ones also come when there's a weakening of the magnetic field. So I feel that there is an imminent polar shift that's in progress, but that's not the most important thing that's going on. That's a symptom of what's going on. And what's really going on is that momentous shift in reality systems. And so a polar shift is part of it, but it's not it.
Thank you very much. Yes. So the reality system, assuming that the reality system is shifting toward oneness, I believe that there are a significant number of people who are afraid of big changes. And what is your opinion on the idea of change?
Okay, I even wrote notes on this because it's so important, and especially important for Japan. I've never been to Japan, but I have read and heard that Japan doesn't like changes much. And many people around the world don't like changes, and they're afraid of changes, and they're afraid of leaving their comfort zones. But the important thing to remember is that we have gone as far as we can go in the old paradigm. It's like people in politics, and they think, oh, the politicians are so corrupt and they're not serving the people. Oh, let's get a young, bright, good candidate to run for politics. So they find one and they put them in to run for politics. And what happens almost every time in any country is by the time the bright, fresh person gets elected in politics, they've had to make so many compromises to get elected. They've had to make so many deals and been threatened and bullied. So they get elected and they're not the bright, fresh person anymore. They're part of the system, the old system. So the old system cannot be cleaned up from within. People have tried that for a long time now, and it's not successful. And the old paradigm doesn't serve humanity. That's obvious because there's people suffering, there's people without food, there's people being used and abused all over the planet. So what we need to do is we have to create a new paradigm. And to do that, that means there has to be change. I'm very sorry to give you the bad news, but change is essential. Right now, the world is experiencing it's in crisis. The planet is in danger, the survival of the planet. The survival of humanity is in danger. The survival of the animals, the environment, of nature, it's all in danger. And if we don't change, if we travel on the old, familiar, comfy road, it's not going to change. The survival of everything is on the line right now. So we have to be the agents of change. We have to embrace change. Oh, the only way to shift this precarious situation on the planet right now is through change. The old systems are so full of corruption, they have become stagnant, and they have stifled the birth of fresh ideas and creative solutions. It has forced people into narrow lives and heartless jobs. Change doesn't have to be hard. Real change is the natural expression of our true being. This is the roles that we've been forced into in the old lives without change are not fulfilling to us. They don't let us express who we really are. But if we become the agents of true change, of positive change, of flipping over the old systems and creating a new world that serves the people, caretakes nature and the environment, then we become fulfilled because we're doing what we came here to do. We didn't come here just to walk in the same footsteps as our parents. We came here to take true steps, one after another, wherever they lead us, and to live our lives as true ones in human embodiments, because that's just what we already are. You know, there's all these talk in the New Agey spiritual groups, oh, I want to develop my light body and I want to get enlightened in old spirituality. From all my life, that never resonated with me. It's like, hey, we have our light bodies. We don't have to do practices and get our light bodies. We just have to give ourselves permission to be who we already are. And the same thing with enlightenment. We don't have to go on this long journey of lifetimes and go and meditate in a cave to become enlightened. We are enlightened. Every single person is. It's just, you just take off the coverings, the untrue coverings, the artificial coverings, the roles, the traditions, all the things that we're supposed to do. We have to let them go. And just give yourself permission to fully embody your timeless true self. If we do that, then, oh, I'm already enlightened. Oh, I'm already wearing my light body. And everything changes, our whole life changes. All the things that happen around us change in a positive direction. And what's needed on this planet now is not obedient, dutiful people following in the old footsteps that didn't work, that weren't successful, that didn't help the planet, that didn't help humanity. What's needed are true ones, taking true steps and bringing change, bringing fresh change. So somehow the Japanese people, I say that with great respect, it's for you to learn to embrace change. And not just embrace it coming from outside of you, but to be the fresh change, to be the new true energies. It's time to live it and bring it. And, you know, of course, that brings up certain challenges, especially with families and the way things used to be if you live in a community or a village, and all of a sudden you start doing things differently. Some people may get threatened by that. They may not like it. But you have to do it with trueness, with integrity, and most importantly, you have to do it with love, with immense love. There's something called a sacred pagoda, and you have them in Japan. You have lots of them, I'm sure. Asia has really good on sacred pagodas. It's usually like a little temple, like our traditional one is a little temple up on the mountain. Sometimes people go there on pilgrimages, and they love it. It feels good. When you're up at the sacred pagoda, you have a view, a vista, a perspective that you didn't have when you were down in the village or down in the valley. You can see things differently with more vastness. And some sacred pagodas, people never go up there. Maybe the path is washed away over the years and no one's taking care of it, and they've been abandoned. And they're kind of falling apart. But even those, the abandoned ones, they have a huge effect on all the surrounding landscape. And the people down in the valley, even though nobody goes up there, they know it's there. They see it out of the corner of their eye. They're not looking at it a lot, but its presence is felt. And it affects all the surrounding landscape. And one of the things that sacred pagodas do is they give the reassurance that all is well. All is well doesn't mean pretending that even though everything's a huge mess and horrible things are happening, oh, it's okay. It's not that. It's a very real, deep inner knowingness that on a level far vaster than our little world here, that all is well. In spite of all outer appearances, On the vaster levels, all is well. Anyone who is ready to embrace change and become an embodiment of change, each of us becomes a sacred pagoda. We don't have to go move up on the side of the mountain and stand there like that. We can go about our daily life. We can go to the market and buy food. We can go to the bank. We can go to interactions. We can do whatever we need to do. But because we are embodying our own trueness, we become sacred pagodas for everyone else. And even people that never meet us or never talk to us. If you see a true one walking on the street, it sends out the reassurance that all is well. And one thing I've liked to do much of my life, when I used to travel a lot, I'd be in an airport on one of those moving sidewalks, And most people in the airport are all in a hurry, and they're all in their own life, and they're all in their own thoughts. And you'd be on a moving sidewalk, and then somebody would come in the opposite direction, and they were a true one. And they saw you, and you saw them. And it was like you'd see each other, and you just nod and bow, and like, thank you. Even here, I live in Peru, in a town, like walking on the street, and maybe some old farmer walks by, and with old clothes, shabby clothes, but they're real. They're not artifice. They're not all these layers of falseness, these layers of being polite, these layers of not doing or saying what you really know is true. They're just who they are. And we see each other, and it's like, oh, it's you. Hello. Greetings from true one to true one. So once you start opening yourself to change, and you start giving yourself permission to fully embody your timeless true self, we become the sacred pagodas. And the landscape around us starts changing. We don't have to go out and with signs and give out papers to the people, oh, we need these changes. We don't have to do that. Just by bringing our true energy in any situation, wherever we go, and with that love and that compassion, and that deep wisdom, it sends out ripples and waves from our beings. And it starts putting influences, it starts shifting the landscape, adding new elements, maybe some waves of compassion. And other people that didn't feel compassion before start feeling more compassionate. We don't have to have long arguments or discussions with people, but maybe just little things that we say in everyday conversation, we throw in an expanded perception of something, and then people who had never looked at things that way suddenly see it with new eyes. So we create change just by opening ourselves up to change ourselves and our own lives. It starts influencing and bringing more change. And it's gentle change. It's not violent change. It's not rip you out of the old. That only happens when you don't change for a very long time. And then eventually you get a message and you ignore it, even though you know it's true. And you don't do it, make those changes in yourself. Then it starts coming harder knocks. But it's not necessary. If we get it and we open ourselves to it and say, yes, it is time for change. The old paradigm doesn't work anymore. And maybe it worked for creating order sometimes, and it also worked for creating a lot of suffering and for keeping people in boxes and stuck in roles. And it's the time for boxes is over. We all have to come out of our box and just give yourself permission to openly be your timeless true self. It's that simple. And it will change everything.
That was very strong message to the Japanese people.
I mean, I read an article on CNN about Japan a month or so ago. The author of the article had lived in Japan. He was from England, from Great Britain, and he'd lived in Japan for, I think, 10 or 12 years with his Japanese wife and their children, 2 children. And he was in this beautiful village, but the village was almost abandoned. And there were only some old people living there. All the young people had gone to the cities. And he was astounded at how beautiful it was, and all these empty houses. And he had a nice talk with the people that were there, and he said, would it be all right if I moved here with my wife and children? And they said, no. You would bring change, and we don't want change. And it was like they would rather that their village fell apart, was abandoned, and just ceased to exist. And as more and more of the older people died off, than have some new, younger people come with fresh ideas or bringing anything new. That was very interesting. It was surprising, except the same thing's happening in many countries. Italy has these beautiful mountaintop villages, and they're always advertising, here you can have a house for £5 or €5 or something in the house, because the whole village is empty, because only some old people are left. But at least they're opening it up to people. It's time for that counter movement. Before, there was the big flood of young people going to the city. And now there's a movement of true ones going back to nature. And you're one of those, and some will be creating communities and living together. Others will be living nearby, but still have a community. But it's not you go in and you make your own separate community, and here's the walls, and then there's the old people whose village they've lived there all their lives. You can't do it that way. You have to go and love and embrace and respect the people that are there, the ones who are all fixed in their old ways and don't like change. By being a sacred pagoda and with lots of love and wisdom, get them to trust you and respect you too. And by respecting them and learn from them, like, oh, maybe your apple tree does really well. It's the nicest apple tree with the most apples of anything in our village. What are your secrets? Would you teach me how you grow apples, or how you grow how your chrysanthemums are so beautiful? And I would love to learn from you. So learn the things that they have to teach, respect them, incorporate them. We live in a small village in Peru. You've been here. But when we first moved here about 8 years ago, there weren't very foreigners who lived here. And it was people from the village. Some of them were very dense in their energy, and they'd lived here all their life, and their parents had lived here all their life. And a lot of them lived in little huts with no running water, no toilets, no electricity. We live 1 kilometer from the main road on this little dirt road. Every time we would go to our land at that point, while we were still building our house, we would wave at every neighbor we passed, or say, good morning, good afternoon, or something. And for a long, long time, they would just stare at us. Nobody waved. There's like that. And we thought, oh, this isn't very friendly. What are we going to do? Because it's very important. It's like a weaving. Like the weaving has threads that way, that go through each other. And somehow, when we go to these villages and we are embodiments of change, we have to weave in with what's there. It doesn't mean we have to all become the same as what was there, because we're not. Our purpose is to bring in something new. But it's not just to superimpose it or to force it on them or to shut them out. So after about a year of driving up and down the road and nobody waved at us, maybe 1 or 2, then the way they greet in Peru, some people wave, but the people here just go, you do your chin up, that's hello. And we were really happy when we got the first ones of those. We were really excited. Oh, we got a chin up. Oh, big success, or a wave. And then I even tried in Quechua, instead of buenos dias in Spanish, I'd say, ayananchu, how are you, in the Inca language. And that was a little bit better, but you hardly ever get a response. And after about a year, finally, more and more people would wave or do the chin, or a few people even said, buenos dias. It was a big victory. And also the other thing we do is we were at that point one of the few people that had a car, and you see people carrying heavy loads up to their land. And if we were driving up to our house and we saw somebody with a heavy load or with a lot of little children, we'd stop and say, would you like a ride? And many of them didn't even speak Spanish. They only spoke the Inca language, which we don't speak, just a few words. And even if their house was further up the road than our house, we'd take them all the way up to where they were going. So we started doing things like that. And then they'd say, oh, would you like some money for, because that's the usual thing for transportation. And we said, no, it's a gift. Or neighbors, your neighbors. So of course we give you a ride. And so little things, and then we had their meetings here. They like to have meetings in Peru, like of the Water Commission and different things like that. And usually the meetings are held Sunday morning at 6 o'clock in the morning. And Emanaku, my husband, he went to all those meetings. And those meetings, a minimum of those meetings, starting at 6 o'clock in the morning when it's really cold, and then a few hours later it gets really hot. They were like 4 hours long, and they were all in Quechua or Spanish. And his Spanish wasn't that good then, and his Quechua was almost non-existent, and he was the only foreigner who would go. And he'd sit there with our neighbors, these simple farmers and people, and they'd talk for hours and hours on these uncomfortable chairs. If they had chairs, otherwise they'd be sitting on the ground. That was part of our weaving, even though he understood about a third of what was being said. You know, and sit there for 4 hours, starting at 6 o'clock in the morning. They started respecting him. They started being familiar with him. Where some of the other foreigners who just come in to live here and they're just doing their own things by themselves. They don't do the weaving. So it's important. And then after a few years, or 3 or 4 years of going to these early in the morning, once a month water meetings, then at one point they nominated him for president of the water group. He turned it down because he said his Spanish wasn't that good. But you can tell that he's loved and respected. The neighbors here know him far more than me because I don't go out as much as he do. Sometimes people come trying to find us and they go, where's Solara's house? And nobody knows. Then they say, where's Emanaku's house? Oh, he lives right there. Because of, so even though in some ways you think, oh, this isn't important, I'm not interested in this, I'm not going to understand it, just by your presence being there as a true one, just sitting in your integrity, listening, smiling at the neighbors, you know, it's worth it because it weaves. And we need to weave. There's a strength. If all the threads are going just one direction, there's vulnerabilities and holes in it. But if you have a weaving where the threads are going both directions, it becomes a strong cloth. And in times of danger, or if there's a fire, or if there's a drought, or there's a problem, you come together. And people, the neighbors started doing things like people would knock at our front door, ring our bell at 11 o'clock at night. And we go, what's that? So we'd answer the intercom. Oh, my wife fell down the stairs. Can you drive us to the hospital in the next town? And Emanaku would always get out of bed, go and drive the neighbors, sit at the hospital with them till it was time to come home. And when the neighbors know they can do things like that with you, that you're not just into your own life bringing your modern changes and everything, but you're real and you're true, it's very important. It's really important. And there's neighbors of ours where a friend of ours was interested in buying a piece of land. And so they asked the neighbors if they'd sell it. He said, oh, I won't sell my land to any foreigners. And then somebody said, well, what about Emanaku, my husband? And they said, oh, Emanaku, we'd sell it to him. So that's how you weave. We had to learn that here too. And we'll never be one of them. We'll never be fluent in Quechua. We'll never have the same life experiences they have. We have our own life experiences that very few people have had. But we don't have to be the same. If they're all go and get drunk, we don't have to be a good neighbor and go get drunk with them. We can just say, oh, we don't drink, or no, thank you. You know, that's okay. We don't have to be the same, but we have to be true. and let our presence be felt, have interactions with them. We've been asked to do house blessings for people that build new houses and things like that. They know we're kind of special and they like us. So anybody like you moving to the countryside where there's people that don't want change, this is what you have to do.
And here I would like to ask you about your books. For example, Starborn describes our story origins, and which has its sympathizers all over the world, including myself. And here is the question: are all Earthlings starborn?
I think I answered that in the book, or maybe one of my books. I feel that everybody comes from the stars, but there are those who remember, those like us, we remember, you remember, I remember. Many people these days more and more people are remembering. Then, and it's the ancient peoples. For example, you take the Maoris from New Zealand. They say the time we're in now is the return of the star tribes. The Polynesians know that we all came on these celestial canoes from the stars to the planet. That's why the Polynesians are such brilliant navigators. They have lots of experience, not just in the Pacific Ocean, but coming from the stars. Because there's waves and currents in the stars too, in the celestial seas, they call it, in the celestial realms. There's the ones who remember. Then there are the ones that are in the process of remembering. Oh, I always had a feeling when as a child, I always went outside and I'd find that star, and I always felt a connection with that star. So they're in the process. Then there's ones who don't remember, and then there's ones who don't want to remember. They don't want to know they come from the stars. And that's okay. Our job is not to force people to remember, but maybe to help the ones who are in the process of remembering or want to remember or feel there's something they can't quite see. It's like that grain of sand in the oyster. That's how you make pearls, is like you have an oyster and you stick, or a grain of sand goes in naturally, or the artificial pearls, you put a little piece of plastic in there. And then here's the oyster and it's like, and really irritating. And often we have that inside ourselves, especially when we're right on the edge of revelation, when we're on the edge of remembering something really important, like we come from the stars, or going beyond duality. So it's often preceding that is that grain of sand inside of our being, and we feel it and we just get irritated at nothing. We don't know why we're irritated or grouchy, and we're kind of like that for a while. And I always say, when I get like that, I still get like that sometimes, and I say to my husband, I'm sorry, it's nothing personal. I just have a grain of sand, and I'm for everything anything but he does, I'm and reacting. But then it's like I know it's making the pearl. And I just try to stay away from people as much as possible, that irritation. And then boom, all of a sudden, it's a new pearl within our being is revealed. And that's part of the remembrance process. And I feel that more and more and more people are remembering that we come from the stars. And we return to the stars and all of that. And there's worlds within worlds within worlds there. And that's why we speak star language at things like the Antawa ceremonies and the 1111 activations. We get them to speak star language, and there's many, many dialects of star languages. There are stars, so there's a lot. But it gets you out of your mind, out of thinking logically, out of trying to translate everything literally. And you just open your mouth and you just speak your truth. Kive mokaya koyono. And you do that, and it feels so liberating, because you're there's so much you can say in star language that you can't. What we do is we have people say things like, after they practice a little bit speaking star language, like, who am I really? Where did I come from? Why am I here on earth? And those are the things, if we start to speak it in our own language, then the mind immediately activates. Oh, I have to think what I'm going to say. And we don't know what we're going to say through our logical mind. We just let it come from the core of our being.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes. And next question. We see nowadays that there are many people who long for the archangels and ascended masters coming to save us. And people call upon them in a spiritual way to stay connected, not really thinking of how they are feeling. But what do the archangels actually want for us?
Good question. They want us to grow up. They want us to step into their, become like the new ascended masters, but not even on that level anymore. When the ascended masters ascended, then what happened is all these humans down here, don't go, don't leave us alone. And they started putting pictures on the altars and praying to them and calling to them. And situations in your life, you go, oh, what should I do? Please give me advice. Tell me what to do. And it's the archangels and the ascended masters. In some ways, they're like parents. I have children, and I'm a parent, and you're a parent. And what do you really want for your children when they grow up? Do you want your children to be a grown-up adult and come to you all the time? Oh, mommy, daddy, please tell me what I should do. And all the time coming back to us? No, we don't. We want them to be able to make true decisions from their own heart's knowingness. And that's what the ascended masters and the archangels want from us. And then they finally got to ascend, like move to another level beyond the duality level. And what happened? They were all like, oh, good, I can go to, and they could go to advanced level. They were very happy about that. And then what happens? We're, oh, come, tell us what to do. Help us, please. And we're dragging on them. We're keeping them from ascending. And it's time to grow up. It's time to our own inner heart's knowingness, which always leads us true. And if you really love them and respect them, you have to let them go. I had many years, I was very close to Kuan Yin, or the goddess of compassion. I really loved her. I had statues. I did her mantra, Namo Kuan Yin Pusa, like many times a day, that calls her to you. It was going through a challenging point in my life. And every night I would lie in bed and I would do her mudra on every corner, on every side of my land, and then above, and then below, and then in the middle of my land. Then I did it to every side of my house, and above, below, in the middle, call Kuan Yin. Then I would bring each of my children, do it all around them. Then at last I would do me, and finally have her inside me. And I did this for 6 months or a year. It took a long time before I could go to sleep. But, and then I finally realized, well, the more I did it, I think the more the Kuan Yin energy, or Kuan Yin, was inside me. And that's where I ended all those prayers before I went to bed, where she was sitting inside of me. And then I finally realized, if I really love and respect her, which I do, I have to set her free. I have to be that, not be Kuan Yin, not be Kuan Yin, but be my version of that, my embodiment of that beautiful energy. And so, if we really love them and respect them, we have to let them go. We have to step into our own shoes. We all have a beautiful pair of silk slippers that are our true shoes, you know? And they've been there all along, all our lifetimes. And most of the time we don't see them. Sometimes we see them, we go, oh, we'll put them on our altar. They're not for, we can't wear them in the dirt. We just keep them there. And we better wrap them in a piece of paper or silk so they don't get dust on them. And then we think, well, maybe we should keep these beautiful silken slippers. The piece of silk isn't enough. We'll put them in a beautiful hand-carved box and keep it on the altar. And then we go, well, the hand-carved box, maybe it needs a bigger box. Maybe it needs another maybe we'll put this bigger box in the closet. And then it's so safe that we forgot it ever existed. And the time now is to take out our beautiful silk slippers that have traveled with us all these lifetimes and put them on and wear them outside, inside, in the rain, in the mud, in the snow, wherever we go, to town, to the supermarket, to anywhere, playing in the grass, wherever we do, let's wear them because it's who we are. And the thing about those magic silk slippers is they never wear out. They never get dirty. We never outgrow them because they're our slippers of our true, timeless, true self. And it's time just wear and be who we are.
Wow, thank you very much. Yeah, that was a great answer. Here's another question. These are the questions from the readers of your book, Star Boon. Here goes. Is it possible for anyone to have visions of the story Brotherhood Ogmin or to contact story beings such as Panachan, like you did? If so, how do we do that?
It's possible, but it's not necessary anymore. Those things happened to me many years ago. I wrote the first edition of the Starborn came out in 1989. It's a long time ago. And I totally rewrote it at least 2 times, maybe 3 times since then. But that was my journey back then, my journey to awakening. And I know it sounds exciting. I want to go see the Ogmin or something, but I don't feel it's necessary anymore.
Thank you. And the next question is about Islands of Light or Island of Truth. I think the idea of creating a new community is very important today. However, if we are to manifest this today, we may find it difficult to maintain good relationships with our neighbors.
I think we answered that.
Yes, you actually answered.
And I want to say, I used to always have the feeling I wanted to live in physical community, like sharing the same land or something. And it seems silly that we all have a vegetable garden. Why not have a washing machine little house where we all can, use the same machine instead of everybody in their own houses, the same thing? Even though I feel very strongly that we all need our privacy as well. I always saw an island of light as like a colony of hermits, that you'd come together once in a while, and everyone was there, but you had a lot of time private, and that's important. But we thought we were going to have a community when we got our land, but the right people never came. And it may still happen, or it may be that it's a larger community, that Islands of Light are you there, us here, other people in other places. As the whole concept of time is collapsing, so is also the concept of space. And things like Zoom, here we are all at the same here and now, but we're way in different countries and different time zones. But it feels like we're all actually in the same room in a certain sense, in the here and now. And so that whole concept of space, the separation and distance is gone. And also telepathy, it's not even telepathy. I don't even like the word telepathy anymore. I think it's old-fashioned. But it's that open, wordless communication on energetic levels is so strong between true ones that the communities may or may not be physical, on the physical, in the sense of several people living in the same space, or they could be living in the same village. So that's a very elastic expanding concept, and I'm not quite sure how it's going to go. All of a sudden, people can. I like the idea of living close, very close by, and helping each other. I love the idea of mutual support. But if it manifests that way, or if it manifests more than one way, it manifests that way. Also, several people living in different parts of the village or nearby village, or like here in the Sacred Valley of the Incas, it's several little towns and villages. And we have friends that live there and there and there. It's not quite the same as living together on the land, but it can happen in many forms. And then you have the global village.
That sounds very real and new and true. Thank you very much. And okay, there are many people who read your Legend of Althazar and feel that they are Althazar. Is this feeling real? Is Althazar reincarnated in more than one person?
Another good question. Before I forget, before I answer this question, I just want to thank all the people in Japan who are reading my books and who like them. I can't tell you how it makes me so happy. And it makes me very grateful to you and to you, Nogi, and to the publisher, Hiraoka Land, to make it possible that my books are finally in Japanese and finally available to the Japanese people, and that people are actually reading them and liking them. And that makes me super happy. So thank you very, very much. The Legend of Althazar, all the characters, and I say this in the front of the book, they're all archetypes for humanity. And ever since that book first came out, I think it was like 1987, the first copy of that, I've received lots of letters, emails, messages, WhatsApps, whatever, from people all over the world who have read those books. And many, many copies of those books have gone out in other languages too. And they go, I am Althazar, or I am Deandra, or I am Ogmora, or I know. And then one time I had a phone call years ago, just out of the blue, and it was a lady who I didn't know, and she said, are you the hermit of the Crystal Mountain? I said, yes. And she said, I know the master musician Vanel. And I said, oh. And she said, yes, it's the musician Vangelis. And I said, you're right. I always knew that. It was one of them. And she said, he was my ex-boyfriend. And I read this, and we've got to get a copy to him. And so that book, of any of my books, gets that reaction. And people write me or contact me and they say, how did you know this is my story? How did you know the details of my story? And I'm also in that book. And maybe you're in that book. And many people I know are in that book, but we don't have the exclusive rights. I'm the only Althazar. We're not. It's not that they've split up into many incarnations, but it's that they are archetypes. And that's what makes that book have such a strong connection with people and such a strong reaction, is because many of us carry that story in our cellular memory banks as if it were our story, but it's really like a universal template. No, it's a really special book that way. And I always wonder, there's so many people like in Christianity, oh, I'm Saint Francis of Assisi, or I am so-and-so, or I am Christ, I'm Jesus Christ, or even another thing, I am Hitler. There's people, I've run into lots of Hitlers in this life. I am Hitler. Okay. And I don't think they're lying. I don't think they're crazy. I don't think they're making things up. I feel like some beings are larger than life beings, and maybe you were a hair on the head of that, or maybe you were the fingernail. And because our physical body is a brilliant map of the one being. I mean, what is it composed of? A physical body. Okay, I'm fingers of the one being. I'm an ear of the one being. I'm an elbow of the one being. I'm the mouth of the one being. I'm the foot of the one being. Everything in a one being retains their uniqueness. The one being is not made up only of elbows, or it'd look a very funny thing, all just elbows. Or it's not just all ears. We need ears, we need mouth, we need stomach, we need feet. But together, it all creates something new. Like an elbow by itself or 5 elbows by itself couldn't create. We create this huge being that functions really well, and all the different parts of it work together. But they're not trying to be the same, and there's no better than. Oh, I'm a neck, I'm better than this finger. No, you're not. We need the neck, yes. We need the finger. We need the eyebrow, So whenever you want to describe the one true being, here's the map.
Wow, very interesting. Here is another question about Althazar.
Oh, so in Althazar, it's the same thing too, or any of those. I feel it's all true, and I feel there's really a lot of Althazars in particular. You all have that. There's a certain component or a certain essence in you that knows that Althazar journey intimately, and it's true, and you are that, just not the only one.
Thank you. Okay, and the end of Lemuria and Atlantis are described in the book Althazar. Do you think will our current civilization disappear in a similar way in catastrophic and be long forgotten?
Well, Lemuria and Atlantis haven't been totally forgotten or on. There's always been some who've remembered them. Nothing happens in the same way. And in a way, you can also say Atlantis and Lemuria are still replaying themselves out energetically now. You can still see some of those elements in the world situation. So it's not really disappeared. What I wrote about in my book 1111, which it's half rewritten, but I haven't touched it for several years, is that at the end of the book 1111, there's these discourses from the temple invisible, and they're really prophetic and good. I think there's 18 of them, and they're quite short. But it says that planet Earth the mighty dragon wind will come, and planet Earth will shed its skin, and all the duality, all those duality elements, all the pollution, all the people that want to stay in duality, all that overseers of duality with all the manipulation and corruption, it will peel off the planet Earth. And there's already a nearby planet, and they've discovered planets suitable for humans. Recently, they've discovered quite a few, and I think one of those is it. And they'll go to another planet that's volunteered for that, and that skin from Earth will go around that planet. And it's the example I use in the book is, for example, there's a man and a woman that live together, and one of them really wants to stay in duality, and one of them is really become a true one. And as you become a true one component of that is the invisible. What was previously invisible becomes visible. So she's seen, say it's the woman, but could be the man. Don't want to be sexist. But anyway, so she's seeing more and everything of what's there, but he doesn't want to, or one of them doesn't want to. So they go to bed at night in the same bed, and then at the night, the planet Earth sheds its skin, goes around the other planet, and in the morning, the woman wakes up in bed, and she's alone. And in the morning, the man wakes up in the same bed, and he's alone. And at first, you kind of, when you wake up, and everything seems the same except one person's missing. And you go, something feels different about today. And then you get up and you start going about your daily things. Something kind of, what is it that's missing? And then the memory gets less and less and less. And the people that really want to stay in that need more time in the duality world. And it's not a judgment. Oh, you're wrong. You missed your big chance. There'll be other chances. It might be a while, but there'll be always other chances. And they will continue on in their duality life, getting more experience. And the other ones, planet Earth, we don't have to heal planet Earth. Once that layer, the duality is an illusion. So all those things we see and think are real, the horrible things that have been done to the planet, the mining, all this stuff, it's just an illusion. It's like our true self is ageless. We have perfect health, on a vaster level, that's our timeless true self. And those you believe in duality, and we're all, you have to age every year, you get older, and all these things happen. It's bringing that timeless true self down into the physical. And so there also, when this happens, which I don't think is too far from now, I don't think in the next month or two, but who knows, anytime between now and, 5 years or something is what I feel. When this shift takes place, there will be some very aware people, good people, who choose to stay in duality. And not because they failed, not because they're afraid to go anywhere else, because they choose out of love and out of compassion to stay here and serve. So you can't put any judgment, oh, you're stupid, you wanted to stay in duality, you missed your thing. No, some really great people will go into duality. I think this is in the 1111 book too. But I think way back then, a long time ago, there was something which I call the door before, because I don't know what it was called. There was another doorway, evolutionary doorway, similar but different to the 1111, because each one's on a different level. And at that point, some of us had the opportunity to go through. That was when the Ascended Masters left. And some others of us had the chance to go through that doorway, and we chose to stay here to serve. But I'm one of those who did. And the ones of us who chose to stay here and serve for another cycle, we have to go through the 1111 doorway. We can't stay for another cycle. Oh, I'll serve in duality. Oh, I'll serve. You can only stay one cycle before you have to go.
Wow, thank you very much. You come back here again. You are the one to take us to to pass through the 1111 doorways this time. And how come the kingdom of AN come invisible? Is there any way we can make it physical again?
We're doing that right now. There were certain times in the evolutionary cycle of planet Earth, like one time was when Lemuria disappeared. It kind of broke up, and another time was, of course, the sinking of Atlantis. These were significant times. And when Atlantis sank, there was the general energy of the planet got denser for a while. It was like boom. And so it's kind of energetically like that. Everything went, and many elements disappeared from the planet. And like until then, there were some pure L's. After that, there couldn't be pure L's of the L Angra lineages. There were certain beings that left the planet at that time or went into the invisible. They may not have left like flying away, and we think of leaving as flying away in the sky or something. There were beings like unicorns. Unicorns are true. They are unicorns. Unicorns do exist. they're no longer able to be seen on the physical. Fairies used to be seen on the physical. There's many places places like Ireland and Iceland. I mean, Iceland, they were making highway, and they have a special government agency of the ferries, and there's an old ferry settlement here. You can't build this big highway there. So they moved the highway so it wouldn't disturb the ferry settlement. So there's still countries today that acknowledge and respect those type of beings. But before, when they were readily seen, so the ancient stories are true. They're true. It's just they went invisible to human eyes. It's just a frequency beyond. It's like with colors. Here's the spectrum of colors, and here's what we can currently see. And that's always bothered me my whole life. I always go, okay, I'm seeing these colors. I want to see more colors. I want to see more colors. But they're there. So it's the same. We think we're seeing all that can be seen with our eyes, but we're not. There's way more that can be seen. And the more we merge our timeless true selves into our physical self, and the truer we become, the more we could see into the invisible. The more the invisible becomes visible. And so beings, like the unicorns, like the fairies. I mean, often children can see fairies. One of my daughters would play with the fairies every day on our land, and she'd come back with all these stories of what they did all day long. She was so happy. And then one day she said, would you like to go meet the fairies? And I said, well, I'm not sure if they'd like to meet me because I'm a grown-up. And she said, I'm sure they would come. And we went on our land, and it's like they created everything into a labyrinth. And she said, usually there's a path that goes to the left here, but it's not there today. And she could never find the fairies. And then the next day, everything was back to normal. I said, it's okay. I'm not supposed to see them. So children can, because they don't have those veils of education, of conditioning, of all those, how we have to be a responsible grown-up person and cut off a lot of parts of who we are. They don't have that. So An is one of those things, and it became invisible, but also most people, it's like their memory, as it became invisible, your memories of it were erased. But there's always a few on this planet who don't have their memories erased on purpose. It's not the person chooses that, it's just they're chosen. Okay, your memory's not going to be erased of this. And I was one of those with An. And I always knew about An when I was a little girl, 4 years old or something. I said, I come from green, from the number 4. And I'm going to magenta, the 44. And the way I get there is through the 11, which is crystal clear. And people would look at me like, huh? And I just like, look, that's true. It's really important. And I just knew that about myself. Then when I got older, I became like a detective of An. And I started reading things I found in the Egyptian Book of the Dead. It talks about the Antes Mountains across the world. Egyptologists don't know where it is. They're the copper-covered mountains. And in the copper-covered mountains is the Tower of Light of the god An. An is the sun, the moon as one unified being, one being. Not like a moon within a sun with 3 eyes. Sometimes people do it, 2 noses. They have 1 nose, 2 eyes. The ancient Egyptians knew about An, but the Egyptologists couldn't figure out that the Antes was the Andes. So I became like this detective, and then I found out, I read somewhere that Stonehenge was built by the Druids and by the priests of An. And then I just found more and more pieces. And then I knew that the color magenta is the color of An, because magenta is the color of the sacred union of the sun and the moon. It's like if you take a rainbow and you turn your rainbow into a circle, and you have the red on one end and the purple on the other end. Normally it's like that, and the red is on the top and the purple is on the bottom. But if you have it like that, it doesn't go red-purple like that. The middle color in the rainbow is green. That's the color of the heart, of love. That's why both of us, we like green so much. And so it's also the balance. It's the midpoint between the sun and the moon. But if you take the rainbow and you make it into a circle like this, here's the green down here in the middle, and up here you can't put the red and the purple together. There's a space there, and that's the space for magenta, which is the greater love. Green is the 4, this is the 44. And just a few years ago, like maybe 3 years ago, I was reading something about the German philosopher Goethe, and he talks about, which I never knew before, because I've been talking about this since I was a child. He talks about magenta is the invisible color. And he wrote a whole book about this, which I haven't gotten a copy of yet. And how he said there's a space between the purple and the red. And that's where magenta, but it's invisible color. Many people can't see it yet. So he knew about it. I knew about it. And then I read years ago about an Ayurvedic text, a 22-volume Ayurvedic text from India that talks about 44 is the number of the color magenta. So there are people that know, and the same with An. These are all unrelated things. The magenta is the color of An, magenta and green. Few people knew about this. I knew about it, but I didn't want to tell anybody about it. Because even when I did the 11:11, I saw how people tried to distort it. And after the 11:11 activation, people were saying, now let's have the 12:12. And you don't go, 11:11 is a master number. If you went to a next step, it would be 22, not 12. And so there was a lot of distortion, and An was so sacred to me. I didn't want to let anybody know. And then I was reading the book, The Legend of Balthasar, and I was in chapter 11. And all of a sudden these magenta ponchos appeared. And I was very upset. And I said, no, that's An. We're not putting it in this book. We're not telling anybody about An, because I was so trained to keep it sacred and safe for all these like long dark ages. And then I said, okay, they didn't go. So I said, I'm not writing the book anymore. I stopped writing the book. And for 3 weeks, I said, get rid of the magenta ponchos and I'll write the book. And the magenta ponchos didn't go away. And so for 3 weeks, it was like, And then finally, I said, okay, I'll write the book and you can keep the magenta ponchos in, but nobody better destroy it or be disrespectful of An. And so then I just opened up my whole being, said, here it is. So An is coming back now. And An was also, at the beginning of the major lineages of ancient Egypt and the Incas and the Druids. And there's, China has a place where they make a lot of sun and moons as one beings. That's a big sign of an An civilization, or with the An lineage. Mexico, southern Mexico, also they make a lot of sun and moons, but it's nothing in the known history about it. But it's alive within the people. So An created all those lineages, and then it was gone, then it disappeared. But the ones of us who've been kind of the carriers of the knowledge of An, it was time for us to come out with it and tell people about it. And first people just, after the 11:11 activations were finished, and I said, oh, now we're doing An. And people looked at me like, what's that? And they didn't. I said, it's not unrelated to the 11:11. And at the first 11:11 activation in 1992, we had a song that somebody created called The Family of An. and we played it every hour for 38 hours during the ceremony. And so we were planting the seeds of An back then. And then it finally got time, and then very few people resonated with it. And then finally a few more. And An's coming back, but not to create a new Inca lineage or a new ancient Egyptian lineage, or to bring all of a sudden, okay, we're all ancient Egyptians. No, to bring in the new reality. It's called the new reality of An. So An was here and did wondrous things, disappeared when the energies got denser for a while, which they needed to. Sometimes you need to retreat and go back in on yourself, close all the doors, reconnect. It's like a bow and an arrow too. When you want your arrow to go really far, you don't go, you bring it back to your heart, to your core. And you bring it back really strong, and then you focus your whole being, and then you can let it go, and it's going to go really far and true. The same thing with An. An went through a period like that where it disappeared, and now it's come back, but not to do the same things, to do the next level.
Thank you very much. And the next question will be about your book, El Ra. The story of El Ra begins with an angel being captured by the spider beings and having her personality changed to become their. Do you think there are other beings who have come to the planet Earth with similar experiences?
Of course. Yeah.
Okay.
There's many levels of things going on in many worlds within worlds. And there's some horrible things that are going on in some worlds. There's some horrible things that are going on in this world. But the specific case of Kerala in the legend of Altazar is the whole purpose of that book is to take the template of duality and turn it inside out. And that's what it does. So here she was an angel, and she got captured in this trap, and her being got compressed, and it didn't just change her personality. It wasn't on a superficial level like that. It made her forget who she was. It put her in lots of pain. They cut off her wings, and then she became the queen, and she was really mean, but she wasn't well, she did bad things, but she wasn't really mean. She wasn't a bad person inside. It was just, she thought that's how you were, because she'd lost connection with her true self. And it's like all of a sudden you move to another country where you've never been before, and you see everybody is throwing rocks at dogs, like all day just for fun. And you think, oh, okay, I want to be like them. I'll throw rocks at dogs. And it's not like you're trying to hurt the dog. It's just you're trying to fit in or learn about your new environment. And I think she was like that. I don't think she ever did anything cruel. And but the whole purpose, and on some other deeper level, she chose to do that. She volunteered. And everybody thinks, oh, her sister Luminara, oh, she's so beautiful and she stayed so angelic. But it's actually Kerala who was the greatness, because she offered to do that and went through all of that, came through all of that, and in the process turned the template of duality inside out. So of course things like on that level of horrible things happen, but in her case, and maybe in other cases, it's not just, you can't just look at it, oh, that's a really horrible thing, she was kidnapped and these, oh, her wings were cut off and all of that. It was a whole symbolic breaking of this, turning inside out and finishing the template of duality. So that book's very, very important. And when it first came out in English, Starborn was already out, and people loved Starborn, and it was selling really well. And people, oh, and they were crying, oh, I'm a Starborn, and it was really beautiful. And then the book El Anra came out, And here's Orion and implants and the Dark Lords and all this stuff. And people were really shocked. And many people didn't like the book at all. And I think they just weren't ready for it. And now they are. And I've always felt that that's my best book and the deepest book. But I am writing a book now, which hopefully will be better. And so far I have probably around 1,280 pages, and there's going to be more. I'm still working on it. I've been working on it for several years, so it's very big. Stories of my life. It will probably be published in 4 volumes, like broken up into smaller books. Some stories are really short, like this. Some stories are 8 or 10 pages long. Some stories are funny. Some stories make you almost cry. Some, they're very touching. Some stories you go, oh, how could she be so stupid? It's really the wrong thing to do. There's all types of, some stories have lessons or triggers that activate something inside of yourself and your own experiences. And I hope that's going to end up being my best book. And I'd like to, I mean, I'm working on it really hard. I'm trying to get it done before the next Antawa ceremonies in May. But if not, I'm going to get it done as soon after as I can. Okay, the Antawa ceremonies. First of all, Ta'an is on. We know the sun and the moon is one being. Tawa is the Quechua, the Inca word, the number 4. And also refers to the 4 pillars in many ancient mythology. There's 4 pillars that hold up this universe. But there's other meanings of Tawa beyond that. Last year we're holding a series of 4 ceremonies over 2 years. Last year we had the first 2. One in February, they're week-long, and one end of October, early November, which Nogi was a part of. And the next one is going to be in May this year. And then the final ones will be in October this year, because we're having 4 for Tawa. So that's why we were only supposed to have 4. And the purpose of these ceremonies is to reclaim our planet, because it's our planet. Even if we come from the stars, this is our planet. And our planet was taken over a long time ago. And that's when duality was imposed and everything. And it's just time now for us to say, enough is enough. The game is over. And this is our planet. And you're going to have to go now. So we've been doing that. We did that all last year through 2 week-long ceremonies. And when they're always in Peru at the Sacred Valley of the Incas. When we come together, sometimes we have 1 or 2 days that we say are preparation, just getting to know each other and going deeper. And then we do at least 5 days of ceremonies in a row. And that's very intense to do 5 days in ceremonies in a row. Each day is in a different place. The ceremonies are different. We never know what we're going to do. And it's like, I realized during the first ones, we'd done these 11/11 activations with a week of preparations, 1 day of ceremony, and that was very intense. But to get up every morning, like on the 3rd day, and say, okay, let's get dressed, we're going to go do ceremonies again, that you have to hold a certain focus, and you get into a certain level of being that's natural, that's who we are and why we're here. And they're very simple. They're very spontaneous. Like I said, we don't know what we're going to do. We do know where we're going to go, which is helpful. But once we get there, we keep these ceremonies small on purpose. We don't want more. The maximum we could ever have would be 22, just for logistics and infrastructure. And they're truly amazing, because the whole purpose of the way we can do these ceremonies is we do them as timeless true ones in the physical. And we can't do them just as 3D humans. If we try to do it like that, it's not going to be on an effective level. So basically, the first 2 days are to go into that awareness, and then we just start working together. And often we go to sacred lakes for these ceremonies. Sometimes we walk if we're at a sacred lake, we walk in at least to our knee, unless there's too much mud. And no, they're really amazing. And the lakes really love these ceremonies. And they hold the energy and spread it out to the world. So anyway, the next ones are in May. And these every series of week-long ceremonies is on a new level. So you don't really know what's going to happen at the next ones till we start doing them. But I know that one of the things we're going to do at the next one is work inside the inner control panels of planet Earth. Because that's where you can start turning switches and moving levers and just making very subtle adjustments and shift things out of duality settings. And the other thing I'd like to say maybe about the nature of duality, what many people don't realize is duality, as I said, it's based on illusion. It's an imposed illusion back when we came here at the beginning of time, when we descended into matter and started forgetting who we are. But duality depends on us for its survival. And that's what many people don't realize. For most of our lifetimes, we felt that it was our only reality. And we lived our lives like, oh, this is a duality world. We have to adjust. We have to fit in. We have to do what's expected of us. And, we have to maintain all these institutions, all these establishments, all these expired beliefs, all these religions, all of this stuff. We have to do it to keep it alive. And it was actually our belief in duality, that duality was real, which provided its sustenance, its food. And as more and more of us have awakened and become more real and true, we realize that we don't want to be the food of duality. We don't want to be hooked into duality. We don't want to go into duality reactions in our lives. That's not why we're here. We're here to aid in the shift over from that to a new true reality. So the more we do that, and these Antawa ceremonies really, each one represents a quantum leap in that shift over of reality systems. And the more we do that, the stronger the resonance of trueness becomes, the more visible becomes the new reality to more people. And duality, what it's been doing is just fighting for its survival. It's like, okay, let's stir up. Here's a wave of fear. Boom. Here's another one. Come get rehooked. Oh, you can't get free of me. And it's really working overtime, trying to subjugate humanity. But it's not going to. And that's why part of the Antawa ceremonies is, here I am. And each of us, here I am. And it's, here I am is a timeless true one in the physical. And then together, here we are. Then enough is enough. The game is over. The game of duality. So they're very important. And even if you can't come to Peru, well, Nogi might be coming. He was here before, and he'll bring back a lot of new things with him. And as he already has, and you can teach them the Hutawa Hu, please. And that's really important. You can also anchor those energies of whenever we have Antawa ceremonies, you can anchor them wherever you are. And Nogi can show you, he will show you the Hutawa Hu and ways of anchoring it. And so you will directly experience it very strongly too.
Thank you very much. I will do my best to anchor the new true reality here. Let it spread.
I'm deeply grateful that you're in this position, Nogi, that you've stepped forth and to help your country and your people so much. And it's so important. I have deep gratitude for you and for the people of Japan. Thank you.
Thank
And
you
those
very
who found my books, well done. And to you for translating my books. And if people have more questions after all of this, after the 11/11 conference, you can start collecting them again,
Yes,
and we'll do another time.
yes. I'll be very happy to do another interview in near future.
Yeah, just deep gratitude and respect. This is a really important time. This is not a time to do things normally. It's not a normal time. And it might feel like, oh, I want to try to be normal. I want to try to do the things I used to do, but it doesn't work anymore. This is actually the time why we are here. This is why we've chosen to come to planet Earth, is to be here in this time of transition of reality systems. And this is actually, you might think, oh, I want to dedicate my life to personal fulfillment. I want to get a nice house, a nice car, a nice job. That's no personal fulfillment. The true personal fulfillment is being and doing what we came here to do, being all that we are. And this is the time where we can do that. And this is the time where each of us is so very needed. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you, Nogi.
Thank you, Solar.
Yeah.